What's up, everybody? Welcome inside the studios here at NASCAR Productions, the home of the Motor Racing Network, and another edition of NASCAR Coast to Coast, where we dive into all things NASCAR Regional. This show is brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering, MRN pit reporter Chris Wilner here in studio, and joining us via Zoom out in Connecticut, MRN announcer Kyle Rickey. Rick, we are past Labor Day. We are crowning champions. And the cool temperatures have finally hit the Charlotte, North Carolina area. I'm wearing a pullover for the first time in what feels like 6 to 7 months. How's things going up there in Connecticut for you?
Pulled into the racetrack 2 days ago, and it was 61 degrees.
Ugh.
And, we're well after sunrise. So it was chilly. Turned out to be a spectacular day. We've had a lot of those days, fortunately, recently, where the temperature really never gets above 82, 83 degrees, not a lot of humidity. I'll take it. I'm kind of sad because I know what's coming here in the next couple of months as we'll be, getting the polos and the jackets out and the gloves and the shovels, at least up here. So, but, the end of the season is upon us. A lot of tracks beginning to crown champions, and here we are now into the final stretch.
That's right. The leaves are going to start changing here soon as we start to wind down 2024. And speaking of which, we've got another champion to have on our show this week. Peyton Sellers, our now 7-time South Boston track champion, tying the record set by David Blankenship. He joins us on the show, and we're going to double up because there's one driver who is red hot on the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour, and that name is Patrick Emerling. He is now 2 for 2 the last 2 weeks, his first 2 wins of the season, and he has vaulted himself well into the championship conversation for this year. So we've got both of those guests joining us. So let's get to the weekend that was this week. Kyle, we will begin on the dirt. The Southern Illinois 100 at DuQuoin, the 1 mile out there in Southern Illinois at the State Fairgrounds. And we talked about it last week when we previewed it. I said Brent Cruz is back in the field. Came up short at Springfield. He's going to go out and win DuQuoin. Well, guess what? Brent Cruz does, but it wasn't easy, especially at the very end. Had to survive a late race restart over the driver that has been red hot in the ARCA Menard Series as a part-timer, William Sawalich. So, Kyle, Brent Cruz flexed his muscle, but it wasn't easy. What'd you think of that race?
It wasn't easy with the overtime finish, 102 laps the race distance. Brent led all 102 of them, was out front by quite a good margin before the Amber Balkan spin late in the race that tightened the field up behind him. Did a nice job of managing the overtime restart, was able to claim the win, and now with 5 races to go, still without an ARCA Menards regular winner. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's just been the case this year. A lot of these drivers that come in and run part-time schedules or come in from the East schedule, running part-time on the national scene, come in and are taking the checkered flags.
I mean, Andres Perez did finish in the top 5. I believe he finished 3rd in that one as well. And Chris Wright was also in there. So a couple of our regulars did get top 5 finishes. But you're right. It has been a season dominated by the one-offers or the part-timers coming from the East Series. The youngsters that can't, like William Sawalich, still can't run the big tracks yet. Connor Zilic just now can after turning 18 a few weeks ago. But it'll be interesting to see what happens down the stretch. Of course, a lot of short tracks coming up. Actually, we're going back to road course racing. Watkins Glen is next on the schedule for the National Series coming up not this weekend, but next. We will, of course, have that for you on the Motor Racing Network, Kyle and myself on that broadcast. But you're right. It's going to be interesting to see what happens coming down the stretch as that points gap continues to narrow between Andres Perez, LeVar Scott, and the rest of the regulars. How about the Cars Tour? The Cookout 225 at Florence over the weekend that kicked off NASCAR weekend down there in the PD region of South Carolina. It was really cool. I actually made my first trek out to Florence to check out some late model racing as a part of the MRN crew that was there for Darlington. And what a race we had, both on the pro late model side and the late model stock side. Let's start with the late model stocks. Ryan Millington has lost 1 or 2 races in the last several weeks by the narrowest of margins or just mishaps on the racetrack. Finally gets career win number 1 on this season in the late model stock tour in a stacked field with Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the field as well. Raja Caruth was as well. But Ryan Millington, Kyle, finally gets the monkey off his back.
Yeah, finished, did well, got out front late in the race. Like you mentioned, a stacked field, a lot of different leaders early on in the event. I mean, they were swapping the lead. I believe there were 3 leaders in the first 3 laps. Been over 4 years since he last visited Victory Lane. So congratulations to Ryan. You were there. How was the crowd? Because watching from home, the place looked jammed.
It was. I mean, they were packed in there. We pulled in about 4:45, maybe 10 to 5, which was really the post-qualifying kind of main event stuff with the Bandoleros and the Legends cars. You couldn't find a seat. We were lucky enough to have some friends of mine, Beth Swanson, who works for Junior Motorsports, let us up into the suite, because other than that, we wouldn't have had to seat. We would have had to stand in the back. It was packed. The place was electric when it came to driver intros. They did a really nice job. And actually, talking to Kip Childress, the executive director for the Cars Tour, every racetrack now has had a challenge of who can have the biggest and flashiest driver intros. Well, they had pyrotechnics. They had a walkout stage, big video board with driver images as they got introduced. It was really, really cool, and a really, really warm night. So it was very hot, but it was very exciting to watch. And kudos to everybody who put on that event. But it was cool. Carson Hocevar hung out with us up in the suite and was giving us his play-by-play after he was done on the broadcast of what he was seeing. But you're right. Really cool to see Ryan Millington win. A big win for him in front of a huge crowd. And that wasn't the only big win, because Spencer Davis put on a heck of a show against Caden Honeycutt there in the Pro Late Model race.
Yeah, no real surprise there. Spencer was good, the entire day, practice, qualifying, in the race. Stack, a pretty good field. Wasn't stacked like the late model stock cars, but still a good race nevertheless. And Spencer's been around a while, finally getting his footing here in the Cars Tour, and looked good last week over at Dominion.
He did. And also, too, Kevin Harvick was in the Pro Late Model race, brought out the Pro Late Model for the first time in a while, and was using the high side to his advantage, just kind of fell back near the end. But on the late model stock, if you're wondering, Junior Nation finished 10th. But that doesn't tell the whole story. He had to battle his way from the back to the front several times as well. So really fun to see. And when it comes to the points, the late model stocks, Brendan Queen's second place finish. But Connor Hall did lead a lap, so got a point for that. He finished 4th. So again, it's super tight with 3 races remaining. 3 points the difference between Connor Hall and Brendan Butterbean Queen. So it's going to be fun to watch. They're back in action September 14th at South Boston, and so that'll be exciting to watch. Final big race of the weekend was the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. Our guest this week, Patrick Emerling, picked up his 2nd straight win on the tour up there in New York. What a race, and he had to do it the hard way with a big 3-wide battle there, Kyle, for a moment for the lead to get by one of the best to sit in a modified, Matt Hirschman.
Yeah, Matt Hirschman, part of that battle. Justin Bonsignor, part of that battle. And Tim Conley, who has been on and off the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour for the better part of 25 years, purchased the old Mystic Missile from the Bob Garbarino stable that ran the tour and ran modified racing long before the tour in the 1970s. He was running up front. First time I think we've seen him up front in quite some time. Stayed out on older tires and forced Patrick to make a move to go to the bottom of the racetrack and make it 3 wide there for a moment going into turn 3. Thrilling way to take command of the race, and ultimately his 2nd win in a row, and it puts him right back in the chase for the title here, coming down to 5 events left.
It does. I mean, he has had top 10s all season leading into these back-to-back wins, and suddenly now is 3rd in points, 24 back from your championship points leader, Ron Silk. Justin Bonsignor, 19 behind your championship leader. So again, it is anyone's game here down the stretch with 5 races remaining. It's going to be exciting to watch, and you look at the tracks coming up too as well. Really fit all 3 of these drivers' styles. Obviously we know the dominance that Ron Silk and Justin have, but Patrick Emerling, and we'll talk to him here in a minute, could certainly be a threat too as well. And of course, next track that they go to is coming up at Riverhead Raceway, September 14th, and Monadnock as well coming up on the schedule. So really exciting to see what's going to happen there. Kyle, some other winners that we had. A Smart Modified Tour, by the way, went kind of under the radar, set I believe, a new first for modified racing, having a doubleheader the same day at 2 different racetracks. Started at New River, 9 a.m., had a show. Then everybody caravanned down to Carteret County and picked up a 2nd race. And it was Ryan Newman winning the first, Danny Bone winning the 2nd. Ryan Newman, his 3rd win of the year, Danny Bone, his 1st. Really cool to see. I don't think I've ever seen any series do a doubleheader at 2 different racetracks in the same day. Have you?
No, I assume it's probably happened in the dirt world before, because for whatever reason, they can logistically do that type of an event twice in the same day. Thankfully, these tracks are only 33 miles apart, 45 minutes of driving if you do the speed limit. I'm assuming not everybody did. But yeah, pretty cool for the Smart Modifieds to pull off two events, two different racetracks in the same day. I believe it was 18 and a half hours when all was said and done from the time the teams loaded into racetrack number one to the time they pulled out of racetrack number two. And something you don't often see. I'm not sure we'll see it again. I think Mother Nature kind of forced them to do that. And we're going to see the Smart Modifieds really pick up their schedule now that Bowman Gray is done. And modified racing in general down south is kind of quieted down. The Smart Modifieds kind of pick up the slack, and they're going to run probably weekly here for the next 5 weeks to determine their champion for the season.
That's right. Last week we heard Tim Brown saying he's jumping back on the tour. We obviously know Burt Myers typically does as well, so it's going to be exciting here the next several weeks. Some other news or winners this past weekend: Steve Apel outdueled R.J. Braun at Slinger to win the Labor Day 75, and Alex Prutney won his second Slinger track championship in the late model, so already crowning track champions out there in the state of Wisconsin. Gio Ruggiero swept the ASA CRA Super Series event at Winchester Speedway in my home state of Indiana. And then, of course, Peyton Sellers won his 7th track championship by finishing 3rd at South Boston Speedway over the weekend. Am I missing anybody, Kyle? Maybe up your neck of the woods?
I think you got all the major hitters. Mike Christopher Jr. picked up a win at the Stafford Speedway in the SK Modifieds. Let's see, I don't think Mother Nature really affected anything up here in New England last week. So other than that, tracks beginning to wind down, like we mentioned earlier, into the final 2 or 3 weeks of their regular seasons. I know Seekonk Speedway starts their playoffs, similar to what we see in the NASCAR national levels. And I think the only short track in the country to have something like a playoff system. So that begins this Saturday night at the Seekonk Speedway in Massachusetts.
Lots to talk about, lots going on, and of course, continuing to crown our champions as we roll through the month of September. All right, well, Peyton Sellers is standing by, our first of 2 guests this week. We're going to talk about his track championship at South Boston Speedway and maybe a little bit of preview of what's to come, because here in a couple weeks, we're all heading to Martinsville for the Valley Star Credit Union 300, a race he wants to get his 2nd of his career. So Peyton Sellers coming up next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering. Joining us now is our guest of the week, Mr. Peyton Sellers. A record-tying 7th track championship at South Boston Speedway over the weekend with a 3rd-place finish in the 150-lapper. Peyton, first off, congratulations. It's a huge feat, and obviously tying David Blankenship with the most track records there at Sobo. So what were your thoughts capping that over the weekend and now being in the record books?
Well, it was definitely an honor for sure. We've been racing in South Boston a long time. It's my home track, so it's only natural that we race there a lot. And to be able to, race as long, not be hurt, not have, things go wrong, it's just really special to be able to, you go out there on any given Saturday night, there's 5,000 or 6,000 people, you're going to have a hometown crowd there. Just the excitement of that means a lot to me, honestly. And, I've had the opportunity to go race other things and come back and do this. And, it took a long time to get those 7 championships, but we did a lot of other stuff for a lot of years in between. So I've been very fortunate to be able to race as long as we have, and to be able to put a year together to win a championship is very hard. We won 5 races this year. We had a great year at South Boston, but the biggest thing I'm proud of, we run every lap. We didn't have any damage. We didn't have any problems, and that's what it takes to win championships. So it's a big honor. It's very neat to do it in front of family and friends. There was a big crowd down there Saturday night, and to be able to clinch it was very, very neat.
And that first championship came, hard to believe, 20 years ago in 2004. Same question I asked Burt Myers last week after he won his 100th championship at Bowman Gray. for you, and you may have just touched on it a little bit, how will you remember this championship compared to the 6 prior? What will make this one stand out?
Well, once again, I'm fortunate enough. My brother's my crew chief. My dad's spots. My mom's filming the races. My wife's up in the corner with my sister-in-law and family and our kids and stuff. And, to do it in front of family with my daughter being there, she's 20 months old right now. So this is her first championship that she's seen me win in person. And, just for her to be there and be a part of that, she doesn't get it yet, but she kind of does. She was in the picture with the number 1 up and that sort of thing. So it's very cool. She'll be able to look back on those memories, and that means a lot, honestly. But Clarence's Steakhouse has been with us in a long time. Everybody's seen the orange and white 26 for years now. And to be able to win 7 championships with those guys being with us this long. Demel Toyota, they've also been with us just as long as Clarence has been. And it's just neat to have partners and sponsors that have been with you that long. You've got some of the same crew guys that have been on every championship. Everyone is harder and harder to get, it seems like. It seems like the competition keeps getting tougher and tougher as years go by. But to be 40 years old and have 7 championships at my home track, I'm very, very blessed to be able to do that. And, it was definitely a challenge this year. We ran a lot of people know about the Hoosier tires. We ran F50s for a long time. This year we went to the ST2s, which is the same that the Cars Tour has been running. So they've been very inconsistent, but we haven't had any failures. We've just had a lot of inconsistency in the tires. So everyone gets harder and harder to win for different reasons. This year was the tires that threw such a different element to us.
Obviously, we just talked about the fact that the competition just continues to grow each year in late model country, and especially the fact that I just feel like right now the strength of across the board late model stocks or even super late models, things are just continuing to grow. It's been a couple years since your 6th championship, 2021, so just how different and how much tougher has the racing grown, especially at South Boston over the last couple of years, that kind of make these championships harder to win?
The competition level definitely stays harder, but the Cars Tour has brought a lot of limelight to the late model stock ranks. There's always been a lot of guys, Denny Hamlin, the Sadlers, Burton's. There's a lot of people that's come through late model stocks over the years. But, the Cars Tour has single-handedly put a lot of spotlight on short track racing in our region, in the Southeast. And the pros and supers are definitely growing momentum in the Southeast where, 15 years ago, nobody went to a super race. Now people are coming out and watching them and getting good participation. So we run late model stocks. It's kind of a regional thing here within Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee area, South Carolina. And it's gaining a lot of national publicity right now due to, guys like Kevin Harvick and Dale Jr. jumping on board and having cars. Dale Jr. has had a car out there for 15 or 20 years now, but it's bringing a lot of, notoriety to this area. So that's been the biggest thing for me. But we lost the championship by just a few points to Lane Riggs 2 years ago. Carter Langley, we lost it. We had a couple bad races last summer that we lost it to him. So we finished second the last 2 years. But, for me, South Boston Speedway, late model stock racing, it's the epitome of grassroots racing. It's what, I work a job every week. I work, 60 hours a week at my regular job. Then I go race Friday afternoons. We're testing and racing on Saturdays. And, it's just, so this is what we do, right? We work on our cars, we go race them on the weekends, we get them to go to work Monday morning. I think that relates to people a lot more than it used to. I think, guys that can, get out there and work on their stuff at night and just, put together sponsorship and friends and family go race together. That's what it's all about. We see that from coast to coast, whether it be a modified in the north or, Irwindale in the west and, everything in between. So it's a lot of that, but with NASCAR Cup racing, it's went from more of a, an opportunity for teams to get an advantage and work hard to find something. It went more of a hard work ethic, finding an advantage, to now it's more of an engineering advantage. And it doesn't relate to the average NASCAR fan quite as much as short track racing does. Guys that go to, fans that go to Stafford and they go to South Boston and they go to, Volusia and, all these places in between, right? Like, they want to see grassroots. They want to see guys getting dirty, working on their own cars and racing them and putting it all on the line that night just so they can go to work Monday morning and try to build them again, that sort of thing. So when you think about short track racing right now and the popularity it's gaining, I think it's because there's a little bit of a disconnect with the Cup Series, which is drawing more interest toward, short track racing.
Yeah, Chris mentioned a little bit ago, you're now tied with David Blankenship on the all-time champions leaderboard at South Boston. Were you able to watch him growing up at South Boston? I know his last championship came late in the 90s.
Yep. So I did have the opportunity to race against, not race against David, but watch him race.
Yep.
And I actually started the year that he quit. So I didn't get a chance to be on the track at the same time, but I had grown up watching him. I was a young kid going to watch him and Barry Begley and Wayne Patterson and, Maurice Hill. There are a lot of big names in this area right through that time period that were also just in the same caliber as David Blankenship. So David was one of those guys that I watched race a lot, and it was just unbelievable how smooth and steady he was. And, I don't think drivers now you see that kind of smoothness. And Barry Begley was another guy that was just super smooth. They would be competitive all year long. They would be running third on a bad night, and then they'd slip in and get them a win late in the race or something like that because they were just so smooth and consistent. They'd be there at the end. So to be able to model driving styles after guys like that is something that we all want to do. But today it's more about raw talent. Wheels hung out. You see guys like Kyle Larson. It's more of that style talent. Where back in the day, I grew up watching guys that were just super smooth and consistent.
Obviously, the racing's not done yet for you, and we were talking about it before we started this interview with Martinsville coming up. But what else is on your schedule as we get closer to the Valley Star Credit Union 300? Of course, a crown jewel when it comes to late model ranks, and one that we get to broadcast here on the Motor Racing Network. But what else do you have on your schedule coming up?
So we're looking right now. Dominion's got a race or two left. South Boston's got a Cars Tour race left. Martinsville's coming up. Southern National's got a race left back in Thanksgiving weekend. So we're looking at some of the bigger shows, maybe even going to Florence and racing there in the fall. So there's probably 7 or 8 more races that we can do that pay a little extra money that we're looking forward to going to do some different stuff.
Final question for you. South Boston Speedway has obviously gone through some changes over the year with management. Brandon Brown came in this year, replacing Chase and Carly. Brashears, they've obviously moved on and into the NASCAR world. How would you kind of sum up 2024 South Boston Speedway? Looked like a very successful year from what we saw, at least on Flow Racing.
Absolutely. Carly and Chase come in a couple of years ago. They did an excellent job. They put a good platform together. They had a lot of big events. They went after a couple, some big series with SRX and some touring events the year before last and kind of really brought it to the forefront and kind of they updated a lot of the speakers and a lot of the grandstands, a lot of updates over the last few years at South Boston. Brandon came in and kept that role going, and he's done an excellent job maintaining that and keeping it up to speed and doing a good job. He's got some new things that he's doing on social media. So South Boston's been very, very proactive. And I think Nick Udowski lets them do that, right? Nick wants to be there and be a part of it, but he also understands that he's brought in some youth and some younger people that have, new ways of doing things. And he's let people run with that a little bit, and it's played off to be very successful for him.
Finally, want to ask you, too, earlier this month, we lost Roy Hendrick, and I know he was an icon when it comes to Virginia short track racing. Denny Hamlin even honored him on his Cup Series car this weekend at Darlington. What did he mean to you as somebody from the area? Obviously, I think he raced mostly at Southside, but being a Virginia short track legend that he was, I mean, what did he mean for the community up there in Virginia?
So I never got a chance to race to watch him race, but I got to know him in later years. We would pass each other at car shows and at the track and different things. And, to hear those stories that those guys told were like really, really cool for me. Really had a great opportunity to kind of connect with old racing and that sort of thing, kind of the roots of Virginia short track racing. And he was very well respected amongst everybody. He, I think he was very clean on the track. People respected his talents, and he had a muffler shop right there in Richmond, and we passed it every week going to Dominion. So I would run into him at the Hardee's there across the road from their place every now and then, and different things. So just knowing the history that was there, it's just realized that who helped pave the way to get us all to where we're at.
For sure, 100%. He will be missed. And finally, I want to ask you too quickly about the little preview for Martinsville. Obviously, it's a race everybody wants to win. It is a crown jewel event. What makes that event, the Valley Star Credit Union 300, just so special when it comes to late model racing? I mean, we see hundreds of cars show up. The heat races are the most intense things I think I've ever seen just to make the cut to go run the feature that night.
Yeah. So, quite honestly, myself, Lee Pulliam, Connor Hall, Brendan Queen, everybody that shows up to race Martinsville has to race their way in. There's no locked in spots, right? The guy that qualifies on a pole is locked in from having to race a heat race, but everybody else has to race their way in. So I could be leading a heat race, have a flat tire coming off turn 4, coming to the checkered and miss the show, right? It's just, it's the way Martinsville is. It's the format. I don't agree with it, but it's a format we've had forever, so we all have to deal with it. Everybody's dealt with the same hand, right? Things happen. But when you walk through that tunnel on Saturday morning, knowing you've got to race your way in, you've got to be there at the feature, and then when the race starts, they dim the lights and bring them up bright, and they got 40,000 people in the stands. It's something that short track racers don't get a chance to see. I've been very fortunate. I've been able to race at Bristol and a Busch race and stuff like that, and I've seen those kind of crowds. But 90% of those guys racing, that's the biggest stage that they're going to be on, and it's an amazing stage. Clay Campbell and his team have done an excellent job promoting that event. It pays like $32,000 now. There's a lot of bonus money for halfway lead, most laps led, and things like that. So you can walk away from there if you've done it all with $40,000 or $45,000, and that's huge for short trackers. To be able to go race at a cup track, to be able to go race in front of all those people. MRN's there covering the race. Flo's doing a great job with their coverage here in the last few years, and it's just it's very, very humbling to walk up through there and see that going on like it is. And you see a lot of young drivers that are making it for the first time. You see a lot of old guys that are just as happy to make it in because they know what's on the line, whether going home or racing. So you see a lot of excitement in those heat races. Nobody wants to be in that transfer spot or 2 to go. So it's very neat. We've got, a lot of ties there with Clarence's Steakhouse being 2 miles down the road. It's a home track for them. So we have added pressure. I'm very fortunate that Clarence and them don't put pressure on us, but I know the pressure is there. I know they're looking like, hey, you better get it done over here and run good this week. So that's just part of it. And, hopefully when everybody comes to town, they swing in the Clarences and see some of the history they've got in there on the walls and different things and get a good meal on the way to the race. So we're looking forward to it. We pulled a motor out this week after racing South Boston to get it freshened up, ready to go for Martinsville. We'll be doing some body work and different things and just trying to get the cars prepped so that no mechanical failures and stuff like that happen. But it's a lot of pressure, but it's good pressure, right? As a racer, you want to go race on that platform and in those conditions to see how you are. For us, it's a neutral track around 13 other tracks that race all summer in their weekly series, and we go to a neutral ground and see who's the best and that sort of thing. So, we got guys coming up from Florence and Hickory and, Dominion and South Boston, everywhere merged on one spot there to see how they stack up against the other guys.
It's going to be so much fun. And by the way, I'm sold. I'm going to have to go over to Clarence's on my way to the racetrack because, man, that just – say no more. Steakhouse, I'm there, and to see the history would be pretty awesome. So, well, Peyton, again, congratulations on the success this year on the championship, and we'll look forward to seeing you September 28th in Martinsville. That's coming up.
Perfect. Yes, sir. It's right around the corner, so we're excited about it. We're looking forward to it. Thank you guys for all you do for short trackers as well, and we appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds like a plan. Peyton Sellers, 7-time track champion at South Boston Speedway. Coming up, Patrick Emerling and the calendar. Much more here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering. Our second guest here on the show joining us is now 2 for 2 back-to-back wins in the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. That is Patrick Emerling. Patrick, you got your most recent win at Oswego, but what a role that you and this number one team have been on. Obviously, this whole year you've been up at the front. You've been close so many times, but what's it been like now rattling off 2 in a row in such a tough series?
It's been really awesome. At the beginning of the season, we had a lot of excitement rolling into this season when this team got put together, and we started out the season. We ran solid, right? We ran, we were relatively consistent top 5 car, and we've just been working on fine-tuning the program and fine-tuning the cars, and just kind of building a little bit of a notebook. And the crew chief Dal and I kind of learning each other, and and just kind of figuring out what we got to do to win these races. And we've just been slowly building a notebook and building a program. And now, if you look back the last 4 races or so, we had just about a dominant car, and with a third and a second, and then we were finally the last 2. We were able to execute really, really well on the last 2, and got a couple wins, and it's really, really exciting.
Currently third in the championship standings, 5 races to go. You mentioned, though, it's a new team. Who are some of the folks instrumental with putting this team together and getting it to championship contention here late in the season?
Yeah, so Rich Gautreau owns the car and the program, and Dal Hedquist is the crew chief. And we have just an awesome group of guys, the Grasso brothers, and a lot of awesome, just a lot of awesome folks. And we all have one goal in mind, right? And that's to win races and contend for the championship. And we've been pretty close. We've been pretty consistent. It's just there was we did have one bad race or so, or 1 or 2 that kind of set us back a little bit. But I think we're, as of late, we've been kind of roll pretty good, and it's racing, so anything can happen.
Let's go back a couple of weeks to Thompson when you got your first win of the season, and obviously Rich's first win as a car owner. It had been a couple of years. I think 2021 was your last win, Patrick, in the Tour. So, was that a weight off your shoulders? Was it also, I'm sure rewarding to see Rich's reaction being in victory lane for the first time? And did you feel like you turned the corner that week that has now propelled you, obviously, to your most recent win?
Yeah, it definitely was a little bit of a load off there. We've been knocking at the door, the weeks prior, and so we've been fine-tuning the program and just building a notebook, because that was basically the only thing we lacked a little bit, right? It's just working together for a shorter time than some of the competition, and just a little bit less races under our belt. So that was our only disadvantage going into the season, was just not working with each other as much. And, we just had a little bit of a notebook to build, and just we've been, like I said, just fine-tuning some little things and just getting just working on getting the program improved. And that's just what we've been doing. And it's really, really awesome. And, really exciting moving forward here.
A dominant night a couple of weeks ago at Thompson. Fairly dominant night, at least late at Oswego last weekend. Talk about the pass for the lead. 3 wide on a restart. You have Tim Conley and the Mystic Missile that he's brought back to the Tour in the middle. Matt Hirschman was part of that battle. Pretty spectacular move there, just entering the second half of the race.
Yeah, that was the move that got us the win there. We knew we were going to have a really good car, but it's just, it's Oswego. It's more like a chess match, because it's really hard to pass. And, when you get behind people, you lose a couple tenths worth of grip arrow-wise. So a lot of it just comes down to track position at that track. And the guys had an awesome pit stop. And we came out, and it was a really interesting start. Because there was Tim Connolly in the 4 with he didn't get tires, and I was starting third behind him. So it was just one of those. I played out a few scenarios in my head of like what we're going to do in this situation, because it could have not have worked out for us. And one of them scenarios I was thinking about just kind of happened. The 4 actually had a really good jump on the restart, enough to edge out the 51 by a pretty darn good margin, and we were able to just kind of since we had tires on, we were able to just cut off them coming off of 4, and we matched the 51 who passed the 4 on the outside, and then we were able to just have the inside lane and be able to take the lead there. And that was probably the move that won us the race, because there were some really fast cars out there between the 51, the 60 was incredibly fast, and if it was reversed and we didn't have as good of a pit stop as we did, I don't think I probably could have got close to those cars, but it would have been really hard to pass, because it is Oswego, and like I said, that's more of a chess match type of track, to where like track position is key and controlling the race is key. So that's what got us the race there, and that combined with some really good speed and long run speed, and that's what got it.
It was fantastic to watch, Patrick. Excellent move there for the lead. So here we go. 5 races to go, as Kyle mentioned, in the Tour season. 24 points. That's how far you're back in third. So with the most recent success that you've had, and obviously the consistency over the year, is it, championship kind of mindset looking forward to this stretch run? How do you approach the next 5 races? Well,
we're just going to go out and do what we did the last 2 races, is go for wins. And, it is racing. Anything can happen. We had a couple bad races this year that set us back. Otherwise, I think, for example, we had a wreck at Richmond where, the other 2 teams were able to, finish first and second, right? So, and I think if that didn't happen, we had also a really dominant car that day, I think. So that kind of got us a little bit, and a few others. We got black flagged at Riverhead. A few little things kind of got us throughout the year, but it is racing, and we're just going to go for wins and see what happens at the end.
Next up, the high banks of the Monadnock Speedway for the 3rd time this season. In the last 2 races, you have finished 3rd there. Thoughts about getting back there, and can you take this momentum and maybe get those other 2 spots that have eluded you here the last 2 races?
Yeah, the last time there, we were pretty good the first race there. The second race, we did finish 3rd. The previous race there, we did have a little bit better car, and we were leading, and we came in the pits, and just the way the strategy kind of came down, it just we got behind a car that was leaking some oil, and it kind of pinned us back to 8th or 9th or so, and then we were able to get back to 3rd, but we had an awesome car there, and really looking forward to going back there. And that track, that fresh pave, is pretty awesome there as well.
Yeah, it's going to be super exciting. Looking forward to watching the Tour when they go back there once again for the 3rd time this season. Patrick, before we let you go, I want to talk to you a little bit about your NASCAR Xfinity Series effort. Obviously, another part-time schedule this year for SS Greenlight Racing. How would you assess kind of where that's going? Obviously, we've known your name, especially last year being co-owners with Joey Gase and Gase Emerling Motorsports, but being with SS Greenlight this year, how is that developing, and what's your schedule for the rest of the year?
Yeah. So there's a few more races coming up there, but we ran partial schedule so far, and we've been we did have a lot of just racing kind of stuff that went wrong, like a lot of issues on pit stops and some breakdowns and stuff like that. A lot of racing kind of circumstances stuff that kind of we didn't get the results we probably should have, but that is racing, and that is how it goes. But we were looking at getting some things back on track.
Well, Patrick, we appreciate your time, my friend. Best of luck on both entities with the Xfinity Series, and of course, chasing a championship now off the heels of back-to-back wins in the NASCAR Will and Modified Tour. Best of luck coming up at Monadnock, and hopefully we'll catch up with you down the road.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Patrick Emerling, most recent winner, now back-to-back winners in the NASCAR Will and Modified Tour season, most recently at Oswego Speedway this past weekend. Coming up next, we got the calendar and races coming up this week. That's all next here on Coast to Coast.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering. Appreciate Peyton Sellers and Patrick Emerling for joining us on the show. Kyle, before we get to the races coming up this weekend, NASCAR announced right after this show aired last week its new 2025 schedules for all three national series, and everyone's already making reservations and buying their tickets for where they're going to go in 2025, including fans of the Craftsman Truck Series, because we've got a couple of new races for them coming up next year. 24 races in total, and a resurgence of the Northeast, including back in your neck of the woods. They're going to Lime Rock Park, Kyle. What do you think about all the new changes for the Truck Series?
Yeah, one of the great old historic road courses here in this country. A lot of great events there for decades and decades, and it'll be fun to see the trucks at Lime Rock Park. And for the first time since, I believe, 1970, a national series of NASCAR back here in the state of Connecticut. So I know Parker Kligerman worked really hard behind the scenes. He's involved at Lime Rock Park in bringing NASCAR back to the state and his racetrack. So can't wait to see that. They're going back to New Hampshire Motor Speedway for the first time since 2017, I believe. Watkins Glen's on the schedule, along with, their traditional stops at places like Pocono. So a lot of truck racing up here in the Northeast, and then back down south, they're going to another rock, the Rockingham Speedway in North Carolina, for what is going to be a full weekend of racing. That also includes the NASCAR Xfinity Series.
That's right, and that'll be Easter weekend. The Cup Series will have Easter weekend off, so it'll be a NASCAR Xfinity and Truck Series showcase at The Rock coming up in April of next year. Now let's talk about the Xfinity Series as well. I guess the big news with them in the Cup Series was the awaited announcement of where we were going outside the country, whether it was going to be north of the border or south of the border, and it's official. We're going to Mexico City in 2025. Of course, the Xfinity Series was there back in 2008, I believe was the last time they were there. But Kyle, they've also have changes. No more New Hampshire, no more Richmond. And Kyle's got his passport, so we're ready to go. Wow, he brought props to the show. That's awesome. I'm glad you came prepared. I don't even know where mine is. I better find it. But what are your thoughts about that, too? Mexico aside, no Richmond, no New Hampshire, but obviously Mexico and Rockingham and some other changes.
Yeah, Rockingham obviously is a big get. There's fans have been wanting to go back there since they left there 2 decades ago. Mexico City, I can't believe it's been 17 years since we last raced there. I was a part of the network for the 4 events that were held there. I think I worked 4 different spots in all of those events. So it was pretty cool to see that property. Obviously, that track has changed a lot since we last went there. There was not a track in the middle of the ball field like there is now since Formula One has returned to the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. I believe NASCAR will be using that section as well. So I'm going to have a different look, a different feel, but it's going to be fun. It's a different experience, and I'm sure that'll be the same when we go back there next year from what it was 17 years ago. And like you, I also had to find the passport because it's been a while since we last went to Canada for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series up at Mosport.
Yep, absolutely. So everybody's going to get those renewals in for sure. I know mine's good. I just need to find it. Also, too, with the Xfinity Series, they are keeping Portland, but boy, those hauler drivers are going to have one whale of a time going from, I believe, Daytona in the fall race to Portland, way up in the Pacific Northwest, then back to Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway, and that's a grueling stretch there at the end of August. So be fun to watch. Again, changes, NASCAR, Ben Kennedy, everybody involved, really, freshening up the schedule, and it's really nice to see. Now, with the Cup Series, real quick, Kyle, obviously, the premier series for NASCAR, and it's got all of its major marquee events, its crown jewels back on the schedule, including the Oval in Indianapolis. But big changes coming with the addition of Mexico, of course, but the playoffs. Darlington now will kick off the playoffs like it had been in 2023. Of course, this year it was the regular season ender. We've kind of flip-flopped back and forth with Daytona. What are your thoughts of Darlington at least kicking off the playoffs and then obviously adding some new tracks like New Hampshire in there as well?
Yeah, I know a lot of these schedule changes this year came because they had to with the Olympic break and the 2 weeks off and wanting to keep Darlington on Labor Day weekend. I thought Darlington was a spectacular regular season finale last Sunday. Maybe the best season finale that we have seen in this format. Fantastic event. Daytona's going back to its date now as the regular season finale. Darling back in the playoffs. New Hampshire, they used to kick off the old chase for the championship back years ago when that format was created in September. So good to see the Magic Mile back in the playoffs next year, I believe in round 2.
And finally, Talladega being in the round of 8, the third to last race before Martinsville will set the playoff championship 4. So like the wild card being that late in the season?
We like chaos. That'll give you chaos
sure do.
in setting or helping set the championship and leading up to Martinsville Speedway, which I believe is the next week. So a lot happening in the round of 8 next year. Talladega's Talladega. You're going to have to run it at some point, whether it be in the round of 8 or the round of 16 or the round of 12. I don't think I want it in the championship race or as the championship race, but at some point you got to run it, and why not, right? Just a couple of weeks before the finale.
It's going to be fun, and of course it all kicks off February 2nd, Bowman Gray Stadium, the site of the Clash in 2025, so it's going to be right up the road from a lot of us here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area in Winston-Salem, so it's going to be fun to have the stadium host the NASCAR National Series for the first time in a very, very, very long time. All right, let's get to some races coming up this week. A big weekend in dirt racing if you're a dirt fan, by the way. It's still NASCAR regional racing with World 100 at Eldora. You've got the Tuscarora 50 at Port Royal all weekend long. Super Modifieds at Thunder Road on Friday. Kyle, I know you've got the late model 50 at Stafford. How's the weather looking Friday night?
The weather, I don't know what we've done to Mother Nature, but she has turned on us here, and we have spectacular weather once again scheduled for this Friday night, or forecasted for this Friday night. I'm expecting a big field of late models for 50 laps. It's going to be a good show at Stafford Speedway this week for their longest race of the year.
That's right, and that'll be Friday night, and of course your Saturday schedule, championships already being crowned. We already talked about Bowman Gray last week with Tim Brown. More championships being decided, including at Florence on Saturday night and Berlin Raceway on Saturday have their championship night, so we'll start wrapping up who's going to take home some NASCAR regional championships. Smart Modifieds at Caraway, of course, they just came off the heels of their doubleheader at 2 different racetracks in one day, and then, of course, weekly racing at Langley, Jennerstown, Riverhead, and more. Kyle, a driver of the week this week before we say goodbye.
Hard to ignore Patrick Emerling right now, looking for that first NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour Championship. Battling amongst the more recent champions in Ron Silk and Justin Bonsignor. 5 races to go. He's gotten hot at the right time. A lot of momentum heading to Monadnock here in just over a week. So I like Patrick Emerling as my driver of the week here for this first week of September.
I will second that. No one's hotter right now in the Tour than Patrick Emerling and that number 1 team, and we appreciate him and Peyton Sellers for joining us on the show. Congratulations to Peyton again on a track championship number 7 at South Boston Speedway. And don't forget, MRN is off this week, so we're on a little bit of vacation. PRN will have the coverage of Atlanta, and then we're back at Watkins Glen, where Kyle and I will be back 3-dimensionally once again, calling all the action from up there in upstate New York. Well, for our producer, Pat Jaggers, and Kyle Rickey, my name's Chris Wilner. That's been another week edition of NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering. Have a great weekend of racing. We'll see you next week.